If there's something strange in your neighborhood, who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! You were supposed to do it.
You didn't tell me I was supposed to do it.
I assumed you'd get it. You know what? Doesn't matter. Welcome once again, one and all, to StillerBros at the Movies. And in case you missed the part where I just said the title of the movie, today's offering is Ghostbusters Afterlife.
So, 5 years ago, we got a reboot of the much beloved Ghostbusters franchise, and let's just say that there was the right kind of people got pissed off about it, but it still didn't save the movie.
So the thing about Ghostbusters 2016 is that it made money. Hate it or not, it still made Sony's money. It just didn't make as much money as Sony had hoped. Now, I understand that there are people who like it and people who dislike it and people who genuinely have problems with it. We have a few problems with it, like the fact that it's built a little too much on improv, and judging by the massive comedy talent on display in front of and behind the camera, strangely not their best improvs.
Yeah, it was. We enjoyed it, and we still enjoy it to this day. We liked it well enough, but. And this is coming from two guys who didn't really have Ghostbusters, any real nostalgia for the Ghostbusters franchise growing up. But yeah, we genuinely enjoyed it, and which we kind of also do as a fuck you to the guys we talked about last time.
So the fact is that there were a few people who just were against it on the basis that it was a group of women. Now, I'm not saying that that's everyone who hates it. Once again, it's not a perfect movie, so there are obviously people who dislike it for reasons other than political boogeymen. But for example, there are bad people out there who just disliked it on the basis that they felt like a women Ghostbusters was an attack. Like, specifically, there's a group of the fandom that think that the villain of Ghostbusters 2016 was specifically a dig at them. You know, the villain of Ghostbusters 2016, a whiny little incel who had doomsday aspirations, specifically because he was bullied. So if you saw yourself in the villain, Helen, there's the point. You missed it.
But, that being said, to the people who were around that time saying, we just don't like it because it was a reboot of Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters were perfect, stop rebooting shit. Where the fuck are you idiots now?
So, welcome to Ghostbusters Afterlife, a second attempt at rebooting the franchise. But the difference between this and Ghostbusters 2016 is that this is a completely different and original story for Ghostbusters. It's a story about a bunch of kids who through a series of supernatural a group of kids made up of outcasts and losers at least partially led by Finn Wolfhard, who find out about the supernatural ancient history in their town. Now that I say that, in their small town that nobody's ever heard of, and there's a lot of 80s nostalgia, and now that I say this out loud, this is sounding very familiar.
Yeah, but yeah, this is different in a few different ways that we saw in the trailers. But one thing that is in this movie's favor is that we have Ivan Reitman's son, Jason Reitman, directing, and he, of course, led the charge in promotional material by saying he was basically the very first Ghostbusters fan.
Now, granted, when this news first came out, he said this was him taking back the franchise for the fans, which led him to have to say out loud, "No, guys, I liked Ghostbusters 2016. I championed Ghostbusters 2016. Please do not get the wrong idea. I did not." I am not saying that Ghostbusters 2016 was taking it away from the fans. Please do not agree with me if you are one of those shitty people.
Yeah, but he had an idea, for a Ghostbusters sequel, and being a kid who grew up on the set of the first Ghostbusters movie, he obviously had wanted to make this idea, and he went to his dad, and he got the movie together, and they put the movie together to make it.
And also, a funny anecdote is that years ago, when they were trying to shop around Ghostbusters, directors for Ghostbusters 3, they would ask Jason Reitman in interviews, "Would you make a Ghostbusters movie if given the opportunity?" To which he said, because of the movies that he specifically makes, if I made it, it would just basically be a bunch of people sitting around talking about hunting ghosts. And the reason for that is that Jason Reitman does not direct horror movies, and he does not direct action movies. In fact, he doesn't really direct blockbusters.
He doesn't direct he also doesn't direct the kind of comedy that Ghostbusters typically would fall under.
Which was basically a lot of the same kinds of comedies that his dad would make. There's not a Stripes or a Junior in his filmography. His movies are the movies he's mostly known for are his directorial debuts, Thank You for Smoking, starring Aaron Eckhart and J.K. Simmons, and Juno, the debut feature of Elliot Page.
Yeah, he's known more for movies with a lot of talking in them, like Up in the Air and the whatever that Hugh Jackman movie that he put out a couple years ago was. I don't remember the name of it.
The Candidate, I think.
I think it was The Candidate.
Frontrunner. The Frontrunner.
The Frontrunner. We don't. Needless to say, we haven't seen a lot of Jason Reitman movies.
I think we've seen two. We have seen two beginning to end.
Yeah.
But long story short, Jason Reitman made it actually came up with an idea. He came up with an idea for a Ghostbusters sequel, and his dad was like, "Yeah, I'll greenlight that," especially since it's a movie. Since this is a different movie. Every other Ghostbusters movie has been a going into business story, but this movie is about a family. Specifically, Egon's family.
Yes. The late, great Harold Ramis's character of Egon Spengler apparently at some point got around to having a family.
And so his family came into fruition. It came in as characters, including his grandchildren, played by Finn Wolfhard and McKenna Grace,
who has pretty much made a career of playing the young version of a lot of different characters.
Whether it be Brie Larson, Margot Robbie, or Hobby, or anyone in between.
Yeah. Basically, if they're a blonde actor, if your thing has a blonde actress in it, there's a pretty good chance that McKenna Grace played the young version of that character.
But except in this one, they dressed her up like to look like Harold Ramis.
Yes.
But also on hand, currently reigning sexiest man alive, Paul Rudd.
And who doesn't love Paul Rudd? If you hate Paul Rudd, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
We don't want you.
Paul Rudd is a fucking national treasure, and we will protect him with our last breath.
God, I hope this doesn't age poorly.
Please don't do anything horrible, Paul Rudd. Please. Anyway, along for the ride are, of course, cameos from the original Ghostbusters, from the living original Ghostbusters. Annie Potts and Dan Aykroyd have been featured prominently in the trailers, but we have not gotten any hide nor hair of Bill Murray as Peter Venkman, or
Ernie Hudson as Winston Zeddemore, or Sigourney Weaver,
who is apparently in it, but I don't recall seeing anything.
We'll find out when we see it. But we know very little about this movie simply because they're not just dumping everything out into the world.
It's pretty much this is one of those movies where they're showing pretty much the same thing, and they're very much invoking the idea of it's but with Ghostbusters. So basically, the Monster Squad.
Yes.
But it seems like a fun premise. The biggest thing about it, though, is while Ghostbusters was a comedy first, this doesn't seem like it.
And it seems a lot more
sincere.
It seems sincere. It may be. I mean, it probably is along the lines of a quippier movie where they just kind of throw out a couple quips every now and again.
I mean, everyone should at least be aware that the original 1984 Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters 89, the two 1989, and Ghostbusters 2016 were all built on the backs of great comedic actors. Here's occasionally riffing on the idea, but in this one, they're going a bit more sincere. They're making an action blockbuster, which isn't inherently bad. We love action blockbusters. If you've watched the entirety of this channel's content, you will see just how much we love action blockbusters. But the weird thing is that from the first trailer, we got the impression that Ghostbusters Afterlife was not going to be built on the back of hacker comedy because it didn't seem all that funny, and not in a wow, these jokes are just so joyless kind of way. This is an unfunny on purpose kind of way.
Yeah, we don't even hear the theme song in any of the promotional material.
Not even what they did with the Ghostbusters 2016 trailer, where you hear the slowed down piano cover of dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, so we're interested to see what this comes out as.
Because it seems like they're building this less on the back of what the movie was of what the original movie kind of was, and more on the idea of the cartoon series and the toys and stuff like that. The stuff that really for the most part created the fans of the franchise.
But yeah, that's it. Pretty much it. So,
I mean, yeah, I don't think I've got anything to say right now outside of actually going to see the movie. But
yeah,
it seems fine. We hope we have fun. But till then, see you after the jump. Did a Ghostbusters movie just make me feel?
I think a Ghostbusters movie just made us feel shit.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Pretty good. All things considered, it's a better tribute to the original Ghostbusters movie, which makes sense.
But also, it's not a. But also, once again, not a comedy. But
I mean, it's not nearly as comedic as you would think a Ghostbusters movie would be. But there's jokes.
Especially when the original guys come back for their quick cameo at the end.
Yeah. But it's such a great little tribute to the movie that made this whole thing possible almost 35 years ago.
So let's get into it. Ha ha! Tricked you into watching a movie starring a 12-year-old girl, you misogynistic assholes.
Yeah. Get woke, go broke my fucking ass.
Yeah. So McKenna Grace is the star of the movie. She gets the most screen time. Her character development is the majority of it, and
they might as well have stuck a sticker on that proton pack that says the entire movie, because she's carrying the entire thing on her back.
Yeah, so basically, as a way of saying, yeah, Ghostbusters are girls. Here it is.
Yeah, we have Carrie Coon is doing a great, and Paul Rudd are doing great in their roles. They are not in it as much as you would think. Really, focuses a lot more on the kids.
Once again, McKenna Grace is most of the kids, and Logan Kim as podcast, in a role who gets just this close, shy of being so annoying that you almost hate him for his name being podcast.
But he's pretty good. But the character's pretty good.
He's a lighthearted little thing. It's a lighthearted little thing. In fact, his relationship with McKenna Grace's character Phoebe this is gonna sound weird, but it reminds me of the Dora the Explorer movie. I promise you, it's gonna come in where it kind of feels like they're setting up a romance between these two characters, but she's aloof and he's not saying anything, so they're just never. So a romance just never forms,
which is fine. They could be totally platonic. It doesn't matter. They're kids. It feels weird to even kind of talk about it.
And it's interesting to see Finn Wolfhard playing a completely different character than you normally see him playing in Stranger Things or the like.
Yeah,
where he's basically playing the older brother in every other movie like this.
Yeah, it's weird that it's kind of weird how little they have. Like, he's one of the named stars and he's not in the movie that often.
And and yeah, once again, same for Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd is not here to carry the movie. He's here to basically be the bridge. To be the guy who's like, whoa, New York 1984 stuff. Let me explain to you what the Ghostbusters were. Children who were born 20 years after the Ghostbusters were a thing.
Yeah, and we get to some very great hit stuff with cameos and everything. It has some callbacks that even we got, being somewhat casual Ghostbusters fans.
And it's also interesting. I mean, all the way that that a lot of these things play out is just, it's like it's having fun because it's a fun action blockbuster. And Jason Reitman, having never directed a legitimate action movie before, does pretty well with it. I'm sure we'll probably be seeing him do a lot more interesting things with his next couple movies after this.
It's hard to say for sure, but maybe we'll see what happens. Not important right now, but it's just so fun to have someone who loves this franchise jump into it. Not to say Paul Feig hated the franchise and was doing it for a paycheck.
According to Paul Feig's recollections after the movie, he was more in the same boat as we were, where he recognized the significance of the movie but didn't really get into it until he was in his 20s in film school. Him in film school, us not in film school, but in our 20s as the 2016 movie was starting to really boot up.
Yeah, but yeah, it was. But yeah, obviously Jason Reitman, who has had the last almost 40 years of his life shaped by watching his dad make movies, and including the original Ghostbusters, is obviously going to take all of that inspiration and put it into this movie, and to make it into kind of a Spielberg-esque movie about a group of kids coming together to create a new generation of Ghostbusters.
It's kind of fun. Once again, it's not the comedic thing that I'm sure is supposed to is kind of the joke of Ghostbusters. It treats the entire thing with this sincerity, this reverence. Like the Ghostbusters were this big important thing, but I think that it's really catering to the fans, because to a lot of the fans, the Ghostbusters are this big important thing. They are. A lot of the people who grew up on it don't think half the time about the joke that it's exorcism but exterminators.
A lot of people, and we who did not, and we as people who didn't really grow up with it, because we didn't even really see the movie until we were in our 20s, until we didn't really get to see the movie wholeheartedly until we saw it in our 20s. We get it. We can understand too why it's such a significant movie. We don't hold the same nostalgia for it as probably some other people, but
I mean, for us, it's a bunch of comedians at the top of their game performing really fun jokes with a fun sci-fi twist. That, yeah, the fact that we get to that there's going to be a whole bunch of kids who grow up with their version of it basically being, let's make Ghostbusters a Marvel movie. I think that's gonna be fine, especially since the movie is this good.
And it kind of completes the trilogy in a way. It's not exactly Ghostbusters 3. It doesn't exactly require. Ghostbusters 2 isn't even exactly required viewing, but
it kind of barely scratches the surface. But everything you need to know from the original Ghostbusters, it reminds you of. It just reminds you of. The characters just sit around and are like. So in 1984, these guys got together. And then it fills you in on what the stuff that supposedly happened in the middle of it all.
And there's some moments that that feels like and even some of the Easter eggs, they're there, and you're like, that's got to be an Easter egg to something.
Even if you're not one of those people who wore out the video on way back when, and you had it on video.
And obviously, and there's probably even more stuff we didn't even catch, like stuff from New Ghostbusters or the Ghostbusters anime or the real
Extreme Ghostbusters or anything like that.
The real Ghostbusters or Extreme Ghostbusters or anything like that. Well, that even though the cartoons are available on YouTube.
Yeah, but
it's just kind of a very emotionally satisfying ending to this movie. Even if you could probably cut like a half hour out of this, and you probably wouldn't miss much. While
some people might see the sentimentality as a little unearned, or maybe even somewhat kind of uncomfortably close to crossing a line, it got me. And I'm sure they went through the proper channels to be like, hey, is this okay?
And it was a very sweet ending, and we get these great moments with these great characters one last time, for what is probably either the last time or the first time of many more times to come.
By the way, stay through the credits because there is a mid-credit scene and a post-credit scene to this, so you might want to be careful with that.
Yeah, but we don't know where they're planning on going next.
I mean, we know that when Ghostbusters 2016 was happening, they had been like, we're gonna make a cartoon, and we're gonna make this spin-off and that spin-off, and we're gonna make a sequel to this one and that one and everything like that. And yeah, all in all, Ghostbusters Afterlife is a good movie. It's a very Spielbergian, very different from the original, but still fun for what it is, and I'm glad that it exists. And I just kind of wish that this didn't mean that we could get a more polished version of Ghostbusters 2016 sometime later on.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what's going to happen. I don't usually follow box office results, but this one I kind of want to check out. I want to keep an eye on just to see where this goes.
So yeah, that's about it. So be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, leave in the comments what you thought of Ghostbusters Afterlife, and don't forget to tune in next time when we don't talk about Bruno. Bye.
Bye.